Good evening. Welcome to the September 10th meeting of the Aiken City Council. This time we're going to have the invocation and the pledge. Let's pray. Father, for this day, we're thankful for this time in this city. We just ask your blessings be upon us. We ask your wisdom upon this council, that the things we say and do would be pleasing to you, and we ask your guidance and your hand in all we do. Please, we ask your blessings upon our state and our country during this time as we see potential with weather and storms coming. We just ask your protection upon our state. In your name we ask it. Amen.
Amen.
I'd like to ask Chief Barranco if he would come up and lead us in our pledge. Good evening, Chief.
Good evening, sir. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We thank you for being with us tonight as we tend to the business of our city. At this time, I'd like to recognize our city manager, Mr. Bedenbaugh, for a special recognition.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to acknowledge, as was published in the paper, that we have hired a new assistant city manager. It was a promotion from within, and it was Kim Abney, the former finance director, and this is her first meeting in her new role. So I want to acknowledge Kim.
I'd say welcome on board, but you've been here longer than any of us have. but welcome to a new seat and new challenges and a great move in your career. We're excited and excited for our city, so thank you for that. I'd like to read the guidelines at this time for our meetings. Meetings are public forums in which many opinions are expressed and the business of the city must be conducted. As such, discipline, honorable and professional decorum is paramount. Courteous and respectful communication is expected. During public hearings, all questions and statements from the public shall be directed to the chair. If you wish to speak, raise your hand and I will certainly recognize you. Please approach the podium and state your name and address. In order to allow an opportunity for everyone who wishes to address council, speakers should limit their comments to the subject being discussed. Each speaker will be given 5 minutes to address an issue and may only address an issue once unless questions from the council are posed to the speaker. And we appreciate you following our guidelines. With that, I'd like to recognize our Mayor Pro Tem, Councilwoman Gail Diggs, for additions and deletions to the agenda. Ms. Diggs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are a few additions to our agenda tonight. The first is a presentation to Dr. Fred Andrea, who recently retired as the pastor of First Baptist Church. The second one is under information, section 5. We are adding a briefing on Hurricane Florence by Chief Charles Barranco. And we'd like to continue under new business, item number 2, first reading of an ordinance amending the concept plan for property located on the west side of Civil Bluff Road north of Pascalis Place, to allow for a self-storage facility. Are there any more additions or deletions to the agenda? If there are none, I make a motion that we accept the agenda as presented.
Very good. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor of the agenda submitted? And that's unanimous. Thank you. The minutes were distributed to council for their review before our meeting. Is there a motion to accept the minutes as presented?
I so move.
Okay. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Thank you. All those in favor of approving the minutes as presented? And that's unanimous. Thank you. At this time, we're going to insert presentations. And we do have one very special presentation tonight. We have a proclamation we're going to make, and we're going to do something unusual, but for something very special to us. Our city clerk is actually going to read the proclamation into the minutes tonight. So, Ms. Sarah Rideout, if you would.
Whereas the Reverend Dr. Fred W. Andrea, Senior Pastor of Aiken's First Baptist Church, has faithfully supported and served the members of First Baptist Church and the residents of this community for 25 years and retired on September 9, 2018 as First Baptist spiritual leader. And whereas his ministry has been a source of inspiration and comfort for local residents, both within and outside his congregation, and many people see him as a pastor to the broader community, not just First Baptist Church. And over the years, many residents in Aiken have received a birthday card, an expression of sympathy, or a congratulation from Fred. And whereas the Reverend Dr. Fred W. Andrea has been a driving force in the historic downtown church's combined efforts to spread God's word, including the annual Lenten Luncheon series and an annual pulpit swap. And whereas Fred Andrea has been involved in the community in which he lives and has served as chairman of the Greater Aiken Chamber of Commerce, president of the Rotary Club of Aiken, as well as holding positions in various other civic organizations. And whereas, as Reverend Doug Slaughter of Second Baptist Church has said, Fred may retire from First Baptist, but he will never retire from making a difference in the community and in the kingdom of God. And whereas, when the Reverend Dr. Fred Andrea delivered his final sermon at First Baptist on Sunday, September 9, 2018, he was standing in the same spot in the sanctuary where he preached for the very first time in the 1970s. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the City Council of the City of Aiken does hereby express its love and admiration for the Reverend Dr. Fred W. Andrea, Senior Pastor of Aiken's First Baptist Church, and commends him for exceptional and tireless service and duty to the members of First Baptist as well as the residents of the Aiken community. And we wish him the very best in his retirement. It's done this 10th day of September 2018.
Thank you for reading that, Ms. Rideout. Of course, she is a member of First Baptist, and I think those words were very heartfelt. Is there a motion from council?
So moved, Mayor.
Second.
All right, Mr. Dewar made the motion, Mr. Giardo. I'll open it up for comment at this time, and I'd like to say, before we vote, Fred, thank you for all the cards, the calls, the visits. Whenever I was first elected into this office, it was after following a mayor who'd been here a long time named Fred. Well, it wasn't the first time I followed a Fred. I also went into Rotary Club as president after another Fred, Fred Andrea, and both had big shoes, literally in the duty to serve. And so I felt like that was a training measure for that. But we've been friends since leadership Aiken County, and I appreciate all you've done and look forward to even more in the future, I know, but in a different capacity. But thank you for your service in that way. And I'll open it up for other council members.
I've always referred to Dr. Andrea as a gentle giant, not so much for his height alone, but also for the contributions he's made throughout this community. And for that, we are eternally grateful to you, and for God blessing us with you.
All right.
Thank you, Barbara, for sharing them.
And I too would like to thank you very much for your contributions to the cohesion of the religious sects in the city of Aiken, the Lenten series in particular. I've not had the pleasure of dealing very much with you, but the one time we did meet, I looked up, and you have made an impression on this city that is obviously long-lasting, and I thank you very much for it.
Okay. Hearing no other comments, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? And of course, that's unanimous. Dr. Andrea, we're going to ask you to come down, and I think all of council will probably come down and make this presentation to you if it's all right. So if you'll meet us halfway in the road. Barbara, I know you have a camera, we'd love for you to come up. Jane Page.
I got your picture.
That's Michelle. We have a proclamation signed by all council members. For you just to remember your service for this time, and we say thank you. You guys hold that.
You know the camera being ready?
Y'all got to get used to this, huh?
I'd love to get one without the ugly coat.
All right.
Act like y'all got Baptist love for each other.
Let's move it this way.
Hey, Sarah, can you come out?
Everybody come this way? Yes. Everybody move this way.
To the left, to the left, to the left.
That's all right. To the right. You two on the end, stand like you like it. Much better. Thank you. Oh, okay. That's Peter, take care of that. No, trust me, I know. You got to go for this?
Lost in overtime 2 weeks in a row.
All right. Moving down our agenda to old business. Number one is approval of appointments and discussion of appointees to various city boards, commissions, and committees. I'll recognize our city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this time, we have one reappointment for council's consideration, and it is Richard Funkhauser, reappointed by Councilman, recommended for reappointment by Councilman DeWar for a term that will expire September 1st, 2020. So that is before council for consideration tonight.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve this appointment?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Is there, are there any names to be considered for our next public meeting?
I would like to appoint Ricky Brown to the Recreation Commission.
Very good. Any other appointments to be considered?
I'd like to reappoint, excuse me, Judy Sennett to the Community Development Committee for another term, and also to Parks and Recreation, Melissa Viola to another term.
Okay.
And I would like to reappoint Ann Dix. I have permission to do so to the Community Development Committee Board.
Very good. Any other names for consideration? All right, thank you very much. All right, moving down old business. Number 2, this is still a first reading because it was a continued last meeting, but this is a first reading of an ordinance to amend the city code regarding the enforcement of yard maintenance requirements. Is there a motion? Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second? Mr. DeWar with a second. Thank you. Comments from staff?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We had this item continued from the last meeting, and I am going to read into the record the proposed changes to the ordinance as stated in the cover memorandum. At the August 13th, 2018 meeting, council considered and discussed at length proposed changes to section 10-4 of the city code regarding property maintenance. After discussion, council voted to continue first reading of the ordinance until the September 10th, 2018 meeting, and a complete copy of section 10-4 which is what we commonly refer to as the, quote, property maintenance code, with all proposed changes underlined, is attached for council's information. The proposed changes for the ordinance are: in section E, several minor wording changes are suggested. In the second sentence, the wording is amended to move, quote, illegal activity, unquote, to another sentence in the paragraph. Illegal activities are now described as a defect increasing hazardous conditions that, along with other causes, may render a dwelling unfit for habitation. Next, in section O, under titled Owner Responsibilities, the time period to allow a structure to stand vacant without any conditions described below is recommended to be reduced to 60 days. The current ordinance allows for this period to be 120 days. Within this section of the ordinance, the vacancy period does not take effect if the code official is satisfied that one of several conditions apply, including it is an actively permitted property and being rehabilitated. The property is for sale or lease, and the property and any improvements are maintained, including the landscaping, the maintenance of the exterior of the structure, and any graffiti and trash debris are promptly and regularly removed. The structure is maintained in continuing compliance with all applicable codes and regulations, and criminal activity is prevented on the premises. Next, in section 10-4Z3, the phrase, quote, or vehicle parts, unquote, is added to a descriptive paragraph describing specific items that are unlawful for any owner, agent, occupant, or lessee of property within the city to place outside of any building. Trash or refuse placed outside for collection by the City Public Services Solid Waste Division or that is hidden from street view by privacy fencing is in compliance and not subject to penalty from this section of the ordinance. Next, in section 10-4Z, paragraph 6 has been added to say, quote, fail to regularly maintain fences and walls to continue their structural integrity and or to provide a neat appearance and to provide the aesthetic character of the city. In section 10-4 a specific height of grass is recommended. Instead of the word overgrown, the specific reference to the height of grass, weeds, vines, or similar vegetation is to be amended to be, quote, 12 inches, unquote. Finally, in section 10-4 CC number 1, the following phrase in bold, my emphasis only, is added when describing various materials accumulating and described as a nuisance. The lot contains any accumulation of debris, rubbish, junk, tires, or any type of refuse or tree debris, i.e. fallen trees or limbs on an improved lot. So, Mr. Mayor, those are the recommended changes that are noted in the Exhibit A referenced in the ordinance that are redlined so everyone could see the appropriate changes suggested. And this amendment to Section 10-4 of the Aiken City Code is presented to you for first reading and public hearing.
All right. Thank you, sir. With that, I will open up the floor for comments from the audience. Yes, sir. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm David Burkhalter. I reside at 130 Springstone Court. Some of you may say, where do I remember that name from? I sent most of you an email this morning. I am also the president of the Springstone Homeowners Association. I'm here tonight to ask you to consider this amendment. We actually have an abandoned house in Springstone. The HOA has been maintaining this property for 7 years. At this time, the owner owes us $10,000 in back dues and property maintenance. If you were to ride through Springstone tonight, I don't think you could pick that house out because we're maintaining it. The 2 air conditioning units are still in the yard attached to the house. The Rinnai water heater is still attached to the side of the house because the people who would come in and take those items cannot tell it's vacated, okay? That comes up, we've got about 85 properties. That comes up to $117 for every person that lives in Springstone, that they have contributed to the cost of maintaining this gentleman's property. We have sent him certified, registered letters, return receipt requested. We get the receipt back, but we don't get a check. The bank down the street that holds the mortgage, will not so much as do a property inspection because he is current on his mortgage. He calls them on the 13th of every month and makes a telephone payment. But the house has been empty for 7 years. During the ice storm, a tree fell in the rear of the house, knocked a hole in the roof. Someone come out and put a tarp. The hardwood floors in the den is molded. It is infested with bugs. Vines are growing up the walls. Once a year, we will trim shrubbery, trim vines, and every 2 weeks, we will mow the lawn. If we were not doing that, I am sure that public safety would be getting calls that somebody was casing the property because everybody would know that it was vacant. That cost the city money. I got a call tonight as I was getting ready to leave the house, timely, from a gentleman in Pensacola, Florida. Just put a contract this weekend on a house in Springstone that had been on the market 1 week. Our houses are moving. You ride through Springstone, it is a nice looking subdivision, but we're maintaining that house. If that house was not maintained, I question that these people, like purchased a house this weekend, would want to live in Springstone and want to live in Aiken. Our houses are selling to people from out of town. They want to move to Aiken. They want to move to Springstone. Let's put some teeth in this ordinance and make Aiken a true best southern town. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Burkhalter. All right, any other? Yes, sir. Good evening.
Good evening, Council. Good evening. My name is Jesse Roach, and I represent the Greater Aiken Estates Neighborhood Association, and that association has roughly 450 single-family homes included, but the part that I'm here to discuss now is the ones that are in the city of Aiken by being contiguous to the city or as donut holes. And we too have a stake in having this ordinance approved. We came last March and spoke some, and we just want to make sure that you know that our support is continuous, and we just want to encourage you to adopt the language that was read tonight, and that would help everyone. And like I said, if we get this ordinance here in the city, then maybe we could start doing something in the county, because we also have to do something similar.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Roach. Appreciate you being with us tonight. Okay. Yes. Yes, ma'am. Good evening.
How you all doing?
Well.
My name is Mattie Bush, and I'm here representing Tools Hill. Our president, Betty Meyer, couldn't be here, so she gave me a letter to read to you all.
Sure.
And you know when Betty asks you to do something, you have to do it.
I've said that before.
Okay. She said, to the Aiken City Council members, we are the Tools Hill neighborhood members who like to thank you for everything you do to make Aiken a better place to live. We want you to continue to select and enforce the code that will help us as we plan a beautiful neighborhood. So we highly support all the codes and regulations that will make it different. And also, I'd just like to say that I also will, support the codes, and I have 2 members from Tools Hill. Would y'all like to say something else? Okay, wait. And also, we hope that the code would also, like the landlords that rents some of the houses in the neighborhood, and I know he probably been renting for 10 years or more, but we never had no maintenance, like painting or keeping it up. And so I hope that includes landlords too.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bush. Come, Ms. Ms. Bush, tell Miss Betty we said hello, all right?
Okay,
Yes, ma'am. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Marion Tyler, and I'm here as a property, hello council members.
Good evening.
I'm here as a property owner in Aiken, and I am asking you to please accept the change in the wording in the ordinance. I moved to Aiken 1988, and I fell in love with Aiken. I love it, and I like what Aiken is doing. But it's also important that when people come through, as I did in the area I visited years ago, to see something that's beautiful. I love Aiken. I want Aiken to stay beautiful, and I hope you adopt the wording.
Thank you, Ms. Tyler. Beth? Yeah. Good evening.
Good evening. Mr. Mayor, Mr. Biedenbaugh, and City Council members, I have something to read from you. It's an email from a realtor, Gracie Waters, from May Baum, and she couldn't be here this evening, but she has a sister in Jim Lakes, very near where I live, and Gracie, of course, listens to her sister, concerned about a property right next door to her that is overgrown, and her poor sister worries about it all the time and how it's overgrown. But Gracie said, Aiken is a beautiful city with many amenities. We have numerous parks, unique downtown streets, and the largest urban forest in the United States. Because of many awards, such as the recent Southern Living article naming Aiken the South's best small town, and just word of mouth, our community attracts many potential buyers who would like to settle in our utopian town. Our City Parks and Recreation Department does a great job with streetscapes. However, some of our citizens fail miserably in doing their own share of keeping our Aiken beautiful. Individual, unkempt yards can be eyesores, health hazards, and just plain ugly. Unkempt yards breed vermin, such as rats, which attract snakes, some of which can be poisonous. Mosquitoes in these yards can carry malaria or the deadly West Nile virus. Unkempt yards sometimes also indicate unkempt maintenance on homes that could translate into further health hazards. Beyond health hazards, these yards place a blight on the city, but especially the neighborhoods they are located in. Unkempt houses are a detriment to buyers who have been attracted to our beautiful Aiken. Almost all potential buyers are concerned about neighbors and the appearance of their home. I recently had a client who looked at the condition of 5 yards and houses on either side of the potential purchase, and as many across the street. Many times we lose newcomers like this one to our area just because of existing unsightly, unkempt yards and properties. Many times property values are greatly reduced, just as my sister's, on adjacent homes because they are harder to sell and sell for less because of someone being neglectful. Yards don't have to be immaculate, don't have to be manicured gardens, but anyone with sufficient means and good health can have a neat yard. To keep our city attractive, let's try to implement some rules that will assist its citizens in doing so. Of course, consideration must be given to the elderly and disabled in assisting them in this task. Whatever we do, let's keep Aiken beautiful and continue to improve its attractiveness to new citizens. That's from Gracie. If I may, I'm Beth Copenever. I live at 238 Springwood Drive in Jim Lakes, and I have a short statement of my own.
Certainly.
At last month's City Council meeting, the Council had discussion regarding one particular portion of these changes. And for our people here tonight, most of the changes went through in the March draft. Some were left off, these 6 accidentally, and that's why we're here tonight, because of those 6 that were left off. On the one that you had the most discussion last time, it was about weeds and grass height. When we talked with Rock Hill, Clemson, Columbia, and Greenville City staff members last fall and spring concerning their ordinances, they stressed to us that setting standards for their city residents was primarily to communicate clearly norms, what the norms were for their city. They said that most property owners want to know community expectations and want to be responsible. One of our neighbors recently, my neighbor, recently used the analogy of a speed limit and speed limit signs on our roads. He said that road signs don't just say, don't drive too fast or drive as fast as you want. Speed limit signs set a limit, a specific number that communicates a safe, acceptable speed. And I thought that was a great analogy. Drivers clearly understand expectations. Right now, Gary Yount gave the City Council last week and the City Manager and the Mayor, and I have extra copies if anyone in the ordinance wants it, but of the 50 most populated cities in South Carolina, we sent to you what we thought was 41 of 50 that set some limit, anywhere from 6 inches to 24 inches for weeds and grass. That's 80 whatever percent. Now we found out, because we just got emails back, now it's 45 out of those 50 set some kind of a limit. Primarily, and I did the math, including North Augusta, which sets, our sister city sets a limit of 12 inches. Now, what the City Council feels is appropriate, we understand. But set a limit, please. Set a norm for our city so that we'll have that vision in our minds of what is acceptable. If you approve these changes to the ordinance, you help Aiken's neighborhood stay clean, safe, and livable, and maintain our property values. We want you to please, as a City Council, to communicate and maintain those standards. All Aiken neighborhoods deserve this, not just one or two. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Appreciate that. I certainly want to recognize Beth, Mr. Yount. I know everyone on ACON worked very diligently and presented us a lot of good material. I appreciate you recognizing, too, that in March we passed the largest portion of this, and these were some adjustments that we're making to that. So it is an effort to really give the tools necessary to our staff to make a difference. So yes, any other comments? Good evening.
Good evening, Jane Page Thompson, 240 Knox Avenue. Members of council, thank you for allowing me to address you this evening. I have worked with Ms. Copenhaver and with the city attorney, with my fellow realtors on looking at this ordinance pretty closely. Some of the recommendations from our industry were adopted, and thank you for that. This is a giant step in a great direction. There are just two small little things that I know are going to be an issue, but I think that it's important to remember that Aiken is made up of a lot of people. And first, on page 64, under the enforcement and remedies for violation and owner's responsibilities, you've reduced the number of occupying days from 120 to 60. Our community has so many folks who inherit property. And they take a few months to figure out what to do with their property, their loved one's property after that person passes away, or after they have to put another family member in a nursing home. This is a property decision that takes time. 60 days is not quite enough. And 120 days was there to help people not be rushed into a lot of those kind of choices and those kind of decisions. So I just wanted to remind you of that demographic that is a part of the Aiken real estate market. It's one that we forget about, and it's a hard decision, and a lot of times 60 days is going to put a lot of pressure on people whose properties they inherit may already be falling down a little bit anyway because of the age of the person who passed away. So please remember that we do have elderly folks that may not be able to keep that 60-day standard, especially if somebody's in a rehab facility, and the additional cost. The other thing I wanted to remind you of is that we have a very high population of people who I like to call part-time residents. These are people who do not live in Aiken full-time. And we need to be respectful of their inability to return, in some cases, to Aiken to fix a problem in such a short period as 60 days. Many of our Canadian friends, for example, who are taxpayers in Aiken and are usually by immigration laws not allowed to come back after they've been here for the maximum amount of time they've been able to be here. To ask them to try and do something in 60 days, I know earlier this summer, I was on the phone a lot with some of our out-of-country residents that are here at different parts of the year. Because of the rain, grass was going crazy, and I was having landscapers every week instead of once or twice a month. And they were getting kind of upset at that additional charge racking up for a couple of months there. So please remember that setting a standard like 12 inches, especially after a huge rainstorm season like we had with 7 straight weeks of rain with maybe 2 intermittent weeks on the either end. So we had a 10-week series of massive grass growing time. And I think 12 inches might be a little too short for Aiken, who has a lot of residential urban interface with a 2,200-acre urban forest that sits right in the middle of our town, and a lot of our residential neighborhoods back up to it. We also have a lot of green space in this town that we're very proud of, like the Carolina Bay at Odell Weeks. So we have neighborhoods that back up to those places, and those people want to keep those natural buffers in place. Those include vines. The other topic that I want to bring up is the idea that on page 66 that improved properties shall not be overgrown. We all agree that you guys are trying to do something with the house in Springstone, and thank you for being such a great HOA. Realtors love Springstone because they are so proactive. We appreciate HOAs that are very conscientious. We have some of them that are, like the ones that have been mentioned. We have some that maybe aren't as proactive. But we also have a huge population in our community that understands the importance of keeping our pollinating borders, keeping our natural interfaces. We also have a whole population in Aiken that understands that smilax is a decorative element, not a weed, by the way. And in some places, the Nature Conservancy and the Arbor Society, all of these organizations are talking about the new move to help you all with one of your biggest problems, storm water runoff. It's a huge problem for the city of Aiken, isn't it? And it's one of the things that we have as an impact because we don't have natural borders that absorb the stormwater anymore. We are having 3-inch grass, water running off. We have water runoff issues. And it's because we have let go of the idea of natural border interfaces and pollinating borders. And we also have an issue where somebody's weed is another person's ornamental flower. Things like daylilies and honeysuckle and echinacea in other parts of the country are ornamental plants. Here, they're ornamental plants. Other places, they're weeds. So we do have that issue. And then we get into our natural kalmia, our natural clematis, our Carolina jasmine, all of those things that are vine plants that grow, that are a part of the aesthetic of our community, that create the charm that is our southern town, but may not be able to be pruned to 12 inches. So I just ask that you give a little latitude now that you're implementing this with a new enforcement officer that's going to be very proactive. I think Mr. Odenthal is going to do a fantastic job in his new role as your enforcement officer. But let's give him some latitude to determine where Aiken needs to be, whether we're 6 inches, 12 inches, 18 inches, 24 inches. One of our sister cities in Camden doesn't have a regulation. They have a suggestion, a lot like our historic guidelines. And rather than saying it needs to be 12 inches on a yardstick, they have an aesthetic requirement that it looks well-kept, that it doesn't look overgrown, and that the property isn't creating a visual blight in the community. So I ask you to reconsider those two things. Keeping the 120 days in place, because we do have elderly population and we do have a population that isn't here full-time. And to not go 12 inches, but maybe let it stay overgrown until Mr. Odenthal has an opportunity to assess what the challenges are. I would hate to see you all say 12 inches and have an unintended consequence that affects so many of the important interfaces with nature that we have against the Carolina Bay, the Hitchcock Woods, and other gardening spaces that may not meet the 3-inch grass height conformity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Page. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Diane Saunders. I'm with ACON also. To speak to the inherited property, I'm actually going through that now. And we do make sure that that grass stays cut. You can ride by it. It's on Pinecrest Avenue. You will never know that my mother's house has nothing in it. We make sure it gets cut every 2 weeks. We make sure that it stays looking like someone lives there. So it can be done, and I'm working with a family with this. It's not just me. So as a family, we're working with this and getting it done.
Thank you, Ms. Saunders. Does anyone have anything to say that has not been addressed at this point?
I guess I've used up my time.
You have.
All right.
Thank you for the great comments. We appreciate that. Comments from council?
I would like to say that I represent a district that has suffered greatly because of the overgrowth and because a standard was not set long ago and enforced. It has affected our property values. No businesses want to locate to our neighborhoods. Definitely no one is building new houses in our neighborhoods because these properties have been unkept for so long. Now, I don't mind thinking about changing the 60 to 120 days for extenuating circumstances. If the person that resided in a property died and now the family has to figure out what to do with it, they should be able to come and speak with the city, and maybe we can allow them more time, but not everybody. We cannot let this go. We have to enforce these ordinances. I have streets in my neighborhood. Almost every street in Edgewood has at least 5 properties on a street. I'm talking about one street. Realtors don't come that way. Nobody comes to Edgewood to buy a house because of the way it looks. And that's not just Edgewood. That's up and down Hampton Avenue and the streets that you turn off of. That's what I see on the north side. And I know there are a lot of people that are not able to keep up their property. And sometimes as neighbors, we need to reach out and help them, not to the extent of $10,000. But at least offering to cut their grass or help them move some of the debris out of their yard or off their front porch. I'm tired of driving down my street every day and streets in my neighborhood and seeing 2, 3 abandoned cars that have no tag, hadn't moved out of that place in 3 years. And they've gotten so bad now, they've actually put stuff in them. Okay? It's almost like they are hoarding in the car now. So I'm in favor of this ordinance as is, because I'm ready to see my neighborhood look better. And if we don't do this, There's no way it's going to happen if we don't do this.
All right. Thank you,
So I
Councilwoman
make a
Diggs.
motion.
I'd like,
Oh, I'm
There's already a
sorry.
motion on the floor, but we know the spirit, we know the spirit from which you come, so that's thank you.
I'd like to say a few things. First of all, I want to thank ACON for being here this evening. I've talked to Ms. Beth and your whole team and the efforts behind everything you do, because at the end of the day, it's everybody striving for a better Aiken, and of course, that's what we all want. Also, the realtors and everything that push our city for people to come in from out of town or relocate, so forth and so on. I want to speak in particular to the 12-inch section of the ordinance. You know, I'm glad I heard what you guys had to say and what you had to say, and I do agree that there has to be a parameter. Just having the word overgrown is just not enough, because that's subject to interpretation, and then you get into this whole, you know, I'm right, you're wrong situation. So I do believe that there has to be numbers attached to that overgrown. So I appreciate you bringing that to our attention. I think I'm looking, as I sit back and I look at all the various demographics in Aiken, Ms. Gill, you make a perfect point. You're absolutely right. But then I look at other communities where that length can kind of be a challenge in a sense. So I would just like to recommend that we consider going from the very, very big picture of overgrown to the very stringent 12-inch, and maybe consider, at least for now, because once Mr. Oglethorpe comes in and assesses and reviews, you know, he may want to meet with you guys and bring it to the table, but we maybe consider an 18 to 24-inch range. Because there's a lot to be misinterpreted out there with the 12-inch rule. Now, we're not just talking about grass in this ordinance. That's the big thing we have to remember. We're not just talking about grass. Once you leave the fact that it's just about grass, we're talking about a whole array of things. So at least for starters, just to get started, set that parameter would be my recommendation. Grass, weed, vine, similar vegetation, again, we're leaving a lot open for interpretation. But I think we definitely need to add a number to that. We need to start setting parameters. And maybe in a year or two, we do bring it down to 12. I don't know. I don't know what the solution is. I'm not an expert in that area, but that's why we're bringing in somebody to assess that. Again, I want to reiterate, we're not just talking about grass.
Would you like to offer that in the way of an amendment?
I would.
Okay. So we have an amendment to replace overgrown with the numbers 18-inch to 24 inches,
A range, yeah.
a range. Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Say it again, from 12 to what?
So currently it says overgrown in our
Right.
ordinance.
There's no numbers.
And what's proposed is 12 inches. What Ms. Gregory is suggesting is moving that number to 18 to 24 as a range.
I'll second that, but and let me just say, and the ACON people, I appreciate everything you've done too, and I'm supportive of it.
Ed, excuse me for 1 second. So we have a motion, we have a second. I open it up to discussion. So
Back to discussion. And I'm in favor of doing this. All right, so I don't want that to be misunderstood, but the 12 inches, the property, Beth, that you're talking about, that you read from Gracie, that house is actually, from more or lack of better purpose, it's across the street from my house. That's the backyard, and 12 inches doesn't even touch it. It's more like 12 feet. That thing is a jungle in the backyard, but it's in the backyard. And the front yard, it's not 12 inches. It's probably pretty much standard. It's a little overgrown too. So what are we going to do with the backyard? I don't know. I mean, that's going to be an issue in and of itself that really doesn't address that particular one. Quantifying it is difficult because I've worked with clients that the neighbor doesn't like the way they do their yard, and they will call the city and say, I want the yard cut. And then you can get into a hullabaloo, and they're cutting it. It rained in the Bahia. The highway grass is 24, 36 inches. I mean, that stuff grows like crazy. You never see centipede go up to 12 inches. You never see Bermuda go up to 12 inches unless you're growing hay. And it's true that it's difficult, but I'll support the 18 to 24 and see where this all goes and leads.
Because we're not just talking about grass. That's the biggest thing that jumps out at me.
Right, and what constitutes weed and what constitutes, that's what Jane Page was saying. I mean, that's true too. I've been involved in lawsuits and testified as an expert witness over such things. And when you start quantifying it, it sets up some unpleasant situations where people are going to be calling about their neighbor and the city's going to have to go check it on every single time. And that's just the reality. And then there's hard cases like Springstone, where that's sad. Woodwind, I think, has the same type of thing of a single house that they're having a problem with, and what do you do with it? I mean, I appreciate what y'all are doing.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't even tell that it's there. But
Well, I can tell you, I don't see any lilies or echinacea in my neighborhood.
and your neighborhood is a different issue, and it needs the teeth, and I agree with that completely.
Any other comments?
Don't see it.
Yeah, I'm not going to support the amendment for obvious reasons, and I've had input from people in my district to that effect. I mean, we're just cutting the feet under the efforts of the Council of Neighborhoods who've done the research on this.
They actually, they're the ones that mentioned the 18 to 24 range in the 45 other communities, so.
No, I don't think so. No, I don't think so.
There were some that were different ranges.
Yeah,
No.
the different ranges you guys mentioned.
They've shown very clearly that 12 inches is in a main street within this state. And I think if you want, they'll come up and give you the
Am I
numbers.
able to ask Ms. Beth a question,
Sure.
Mayor? Yes, where did the 18 to 24 inch,
Ms.
Yes,
Copenhagen,
please,
yeah,
Ms. Beth,
if you would, please.
yeah, sure.
Handouts, if you'd
thought-
like to have it.
Yes, please.
The 18 was at Pickens and at Central. No ranges. There are specific
Set.
numbers.
Yes. The range was me, yes, but the numbers you mentioned.
Pickens, Central, Lancaster, 18, and Georgetown. Oh, there's one more, Port Royal, 18. There was only one that was 24.
Right, and that's within those 45 cities that you
Out of
said. Yes.
The
How many
50
total
most
were 12?
populated. Excuse
How
me?
many total were 12?
I have that, just one moment. Um, 34 out of the 50 have 12 or less, because those just weren't 12. Several have 10, several have 6. So that means out of the 50, then 16 out of the 50 have more than 12. Again, only one has 24.
Okay.
May I? Do you want to have this?
Ms. Beth, would I, and I want to, I'm just trying to see this objectively. So if the range is an issue, would ACON be comfortable if we considered like 18? Like if we look at everything, again, it's not just grass I'm looking at here. I'm looking at the whole, I mean, it's written here that we're including grass, weeds, vines, similar vegetation, which could be left up to interpretation. That's just where I'm coming from.
And may I suggest, I can't speak for the membership
No.
of all of these neighborhoods. We know that the cities that we talked to and came to talk with us, Rock Hill, Greenville, Gary had 10, didn't they? All of the rest had 12. I would suggest, my suggestion only, is that you not give a range. You give a number.
Okay.
And stick with that number. We knew that more than 50%, 34 out of 50, go with the 12-inch range. And I would also suggest if there is a concern about areas like Carolina Bay and those could be written into the exception behind it, not including city parks, Hitchcock Woods, Carolina Bay, and specific areas.
Which what you're saying makes sense, but that's not how the ordinance is written.
But it could.
No.
Since this is first reading, that could be
Before second reading, it could be.
before second reading. But I still urge you to consider that only a specific number, and no one's going to jump out there, gee, you're 12 and a half inches.
Right.
They're going to start looking at it when it gets 18 to 2 foot tall or
And I
more.
would be comfortable not doing a range, that's fine, you know, again, you're more the experts in this regard, but I'm just reading the ordinance for what it's written as right now. And setting a straight number would be fine, even 18, that, you know, and cap it at that. Strictly because of how the ordinance is written. You know, if we add what you're suggesting for second reading, then we would have to take that into consideration, but,
ACON's recommendation is still 12 inches. And, the city council, of course, has to come up with what it feels comfortable with, but I obviously agree with Mrs. Diggs because we've ridden as ACON members around the city, toured the city, and the neighborhoods need the city council's help in setting a standard and setting a norm.
with that standard, we, the city of Aiken, are a standard, so I'd like to also ask staff for the next meeting to provide what we're looking at as a city, how we're maintaining, at what levels, what we're considering as weeds and shrubs and vegetation, because we should practice what we preach. So as a city, are we able to uphold, without hiring an excessive amount of staff and all these other things, the 12 inches, or would we be able to uphold the 18 inches? And I'd like that information from staff.
Thank you, Beth.
We can provide that.
Okay. Yes, sir, Mr. Waltz.
I've sat here and listened to this, and we definitely need an ordinance like this. I can tell you, I've got property in Columbia, in downtown Columbia, if the grass grows over the sidewalk, they send you a picture and give you X amount of time to clean it up before you get fined. But that's Columbia, that's a city. We're not quite this metropolitan city that Columbia is. This year, we would not have adhered to this ordinance in our parkways. You know, our parkways are all way overgrown. So we can't hold others accountable if we can't meet that requirement ourselves. In my district, we have horse properties. Some of those people are gone for a period of time. Those properties grow up. Or the paddock grows up. Is the paddock considered grass, or is it considered different from this? We've taken a broad paintbrush and painted this thing. I'm just wondering how we need to trim it out now and see. I don't have a problem with 12 inches on an individual home, but if they're out of town, if they're Canadians or something else who are not here, you know, they may not know what's going on when we have 7 weeks of rain. They may not be able to do it. If they've inherited a property, they may not have the wherewithal to cut it every month until they do something with it. We can't use this one thing to catch all. We've got to figure out a way to do it. If we go in and start separating all this stuff out, we're never going to get it passed. We've got to pass something. So the question is, how can we pass something, and how can we put common sense into it? We're picking on Officer Odenthal to come in and save us all here, and I don't think that's what he signed up for. Darn right, Carl? But we've got to come up with a way that we can enforce this and make it logical. And Gail's thing, if there's cars out there with stuff in them, we need to be able to haul them off.
Well,
We should be able to do that.
We have it. Same with the properties.
Yeah, well, we should be able to.
Well,
So there's
but in my district, what you have to realize is my constituents ask me all the time, why is there no growth on North Side? Why is there no new housing developments? Why are no businesses coming? Why people don't want to live on North Side, right around the streets in my district? And you won't even have to ask. It's obvious.
Okay, I'm gonna pull our.
I have been on those streets.
I'm gonna pull our discussion back at this time to the amendment that's on the floor.
So I think we have to figure out a way of enforcing this with common sense. Otherwise, we're going to have a problem.
So let me ask a question that begs, and we'll have staff, and I'd like to say Mike Jordan's here, who does a heck of a job with enforcement. He's been understaffed. He now has somebody as administrative helping him out for the first time. I think came on board this week. Is that-
Last week.
Last week, and we do want to welcome our future code enforcement as well, who's coming, Carl.
That's right. He starts the next Monday.
But
And-
but it's not from lack of effort from our current officer, so I don't want to, I certainly want to thank him for all of his efforts too. Mike, let me ask you a question. If you could come up at this time. This is Mike Jordan, our code enforcement officer. Mike, if somebody is seen with 12 inches or 18 inches of if that's what we do, what would be the follow-up to that? Would they have a time that they'd be given to come into compliance, or?
Typically, there is a first offender, be 30 days. We can shorten that. Repeat could be a week. The problem is, it's been discussed here, especially back when we had those 3-4 weeks of steady rain. Quite a few, the majority of citizens would have got a notice from us because of the Bahia. One thing was too wet to cut, but 3 days, you're at the 12 inches. Now, I can speak personally in my yard. I had that same problem. But I can look at every inch of my lawn to know there's not critters sneaking around and doing. That's our concern with the 12-inch limit, that all we're going to be doing is sending out notices to everybody with the Bahia. We have the same problem in our parkways. That's why in the past, the last 30-plus years, we've used overgrown. That allows us to look at the worst case where it does involve health, safety of neighbors. And we can devote what limited resources we have to those the worst case properties that we have. Some instances, 12 inches is too high. The lawn should have been taken care of. We have areas in some subdivisions that we do have weeds in excess of that, but they're using for bank stabilization. We don't want to go in and cut and kill that and then have erosion issues with it. So there's not one thing that fits all with this. That's why it's been our suggestion to stay with overgrown. Then we take it case by case and look at everything and pick the worst, and again, commit our resources to those properties that are obvious that we could take to court if need be and testify that it affects health and safety of the neighborhood. And that's what we've been doing in the past.
Have you ever had a problem with overgrown in court? I know that was one of the conversations we had. Just the broad term overgrown not being defined. Have you gone to court with that, and has it been an issue?
Not for us. Again, that's something we would take pictures and we would make our case that they need to fix it. And we've actually kind of adopted policy on these a lot of times. We send in our own contractor to actually clean it up. That seems to expedite it versus the time frame to go to court, the judge allowing a certain amount of time to correct it. We just give them that time, especially for repeat offenders. And if they don't comply with it, we send the contractor in, we cut it and clean it, and then bill the owner for the work. But as far as, I haven't had any issues, but most of the time we make very few court cases with this. They either comply or we send the contractor in. That's sort of been our normal procedure.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Mike while he's up here?
Yeah, while we have you up here, and going back to this house that's overgrown in the backyard, is this going to transcend into, we got to police backyards of people as well, or if the front yard's kept, or how do we do that?
If we're aware of it, that's a violation and should be. Now, whether Teddy's been made aware of it and we're taking action, I'm not sure, but the backyard.
Yeah, I walked back there with Teddy.
If I may, the ordinance does not differentiate between front yard and backyard.
Okay.
It's the entire yard.
All right.
I'm not familiar with the property, but if it's overgrown with weeds and stuff like that.
We definitely need to eliminate the overgrown vagueness. That just makes no sense.
And again, the 12 inches though, with especially the Bahia, that's all we're going to do is send out notices, because that's 3 days of growth and everything is just, and that's kind of the problem. There's just not one size that fits all for this.
Right.
We haven't had any issues with the way that we've approached it. With it's just overgrown, and we send the contractors in and clean it ourselves.
All right. Thank you, Mike.
Dick, did you want to ask?
Yeah, I don't have a question for Mike. I just want to point out, I would expect staff to have the wisdom to understand that if we've had a lot of rain, we're not going to go out there and write up people for having high grass. I mean, there's got to be a major level of common sense to this thing. What I'm seeing is a community out there that's asking us to give them the means to keep their neighborhood appropriately maintained so that the value of the housing and the quality of the neighborhoods is there. And I'm not sure why we want to kind of change what they've spent months of research doing and visiting. These folks went to some of these cities to look, and they're trying to make us a better community, and I think we should support them rather than look for holes. It's not.
Thanks for that. I would just say it, and we're going.
It's not a perfect world, but this ordinance will give our inspectors the ability to deal with the issues of concern on the part of the city. That's what our job is.
And I think this entire council sees that and supports ACON in all of those missions.
Except the 12 inches.
The difference is from going from one extreme to the next. That's the only thing. So just want to make that clear. And finding that right number. And it's tough. It's not an easy decision.
I don't feel I'm going from one extreme to another, or that you're going from one extreme to another. They want 12 inches. Let's give them 12 inches.
Well, I'm going to say this. Thank you for that, Mr. DeWar. I'm going to say this. To have debate over one issue, over what was everything that was passed in March, and 6 amendments to that to even make it even more teeth, and to say that we have a healthy debate over one issue is not supporting. To say that's not supporting our Aiken Council on Neighborhoods is disingenuous, because I think certainly I hope that they'll agree that this council has supported it in the vote in March, as well as the 6 items we're considering to even give it more teeth. It's one issue and one debate, and I think it's healthy to have it among this council. So anyway, we have an amendment on the floor. It's to change the 12 inches to 18 inches. We have a motion and a second. This is a vote on the amendment, not on the ordinance. So at this time, I'll call all those in favor. Please raise your hand.
Of the
18 inches. We're voting on the 18 inches to amend it to 18 inches from 12. So, okay, that's Councilman Waltz, Councilwoman Gregory, the mayor, Councilman Jarrett for. All those opposed? Councilwoman Diggs, Councilman DeWar, and so the amendment passes. Now for consideration of the motion with the amendment of 18 inches. So this is back to the ordinance, amended to be 18 inches instead of 12.
Aren't we going to have a second reading? This is first reading.
It is, but we have to vote on it for first reading. But yes, you're correct. This is first reading.
All right.
And I think there were some things that were brought up, in fact, with buffers and some other things that probably could be added in second reading. I think we should ask staff to address. I think that's actually a very good point, as you mentioned, with the horse property. So I think those things do need to be considered.
I don't think we compared a city in there that has a Hitchcock Woods in the middle of it.
No.
Hitchcock Woods is not part of this. They're private. They have no function within the city.
Well, actually, they're not in the city either.
My point is that they're different types of cities. We're comparing metropolitan areas to us, and we're not a complete metropolitan area.
So back to the original question as amended. All those in favor of the ordinance with every change, all 5 changes as given, 1 change, which is 10-4AA, changed to 18-inch limit. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, so that's Councilman Waltz, Councilwoman Gregory, the mayor, Councilman Jarrett for. All those opposed? Okay, Councilman DeWar and Councilwoman Diggs. So the motion passes and will come up for second reading. So thank you. Moving down the agenda to old business.
Do you want to let them leave?
Not a good thing to have so many people show up and blow them off.
Blow them off.
Blowing them off.
We're not blowing them off. We just what the mayor just said, we discussed one item.
You know, it was a very important item for them.
Oh,
And we thank everyone for coming out tonight.
voted against it. You did.
Yeah, he voted against it.
All right, moving down old business, this is number 3, this is a second reading and public hearing of an ordinance to annex property at 784 Henry Street and zone it residential single-family RS10. By title, this is an ordinance to annex to the corporate limits of the city of Aiken certain property located at 784 Henry Street and to zone the same residential single-family RS10. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilman Dewar. Comments from staff?
Thank you, Mayor. We have tonight second reading of an ordinance to annex property at said address and zone at RS10. The Planning Commission considered it at their July meeting and recommended annexation, and council passed it on first reading on August 13th and is back for you for second and final reading.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Beanball. Comments from the audience? Comments from council? Okay, all those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Moving down old business, item number 4, this is a second reading and public hearing of an ordinance to rezone and approve a concept plan for property at 2820 Whiskey Road. By title, an ordinance amending the zoning the real estate located at 2820 Whiskey Road from planned commercial PC to planned residential PR. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Girardeau, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Councilwoman Gregory, comments from staff?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have the applicant, Bill Beasley Homes, is recommending a concept plan approval and rezoning from planned commercial to planned residential for approximately 20 acres on Whiskey Road. And this proposed development is Danbrook Village. The Planning Commission reviewed this at their July meeting and unanimously recommended it be changed. That went along with the recommendation from the applicant. Since before first reading, there was some additional adjustments to the concept plan. Engineering and Utilities noted that an additional 5 feet of right-of-way throughout the development was needed, as well as aligning the entrance drive off of Whiskey Road. That reduced the number of units from 118 to 116 due to the minor modification. This was approved administratively and was part of what council considered at first reading on August the 13th. So it is back for second reading and public hearing of the rezoning of this property to from planned commercial to planned residential, and approve the amended concept plan.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Beanball. Any comments from the audience? Comments from council? And all those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Number 5 under old business, this is a second reading and public hearing of an ordinance to sell 3 lots in Tool Hill to Stephen Hutto. By title, an ordinance approving the sale of 3 properties on Cox Avenue in Tool Hill. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Councilman Girardeau. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilman Dewar. Comments from staff?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have from the individual has offered to purchase the 3 lots in Tool Hill on Cox Avenue for $12,000. He intends to construct housing for himself and other amenities on the 2 of the lots, and any net proceeds we recommend placed in our fund for building demolition. Council approved this at first reading on August 13th. My understanding is the proposed buyer did go to, there was a meeting in the community and went over to introduce himself. So I know that was some concern from when Ms. Myers was at the last meeting. That was an issue, but anyway, we have this back to council for second and final reading and public hearing for this purchase.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Beanball. Any comments from the audience? Yes, ma'am. Good evening.
Good evening again.
Good evening.
All of you. In reference to the lots on Cox Avenue, what are those lots? What are the addresses to those lots?
Yeah, let's see.
The address is, I have the parcel numbers. One address is 817 Cox Avenue, is one of the listed
Where
addresses.
817 is?
And 807 and 834, those are the assigned 911 addresses for those lots.
I'm just not familiar. I live on Cox
Yep.
Avenue.
There is a map of the proposed property in the agenda packet.
She probably didn't have
If you wish, I can,
Pull up the map, Sarah.
What's your address?
My address is 842 Cox Avenue.
you are yes, I see your address on the map, and when there's a paper copy right there, ma'am. But as you see, your address is on the northern side of the lot. You're at 2 lots over is 1 lot, and then there are 2 lots highlighted in yellow on the southern side.
Okay, so once the properties are purchased, you said 2 would be used for redevelopment?
That's right. He's going to build as a personal residence on those properties in an accessory building. Yes.
Well, would there be any type of development for the one that hasn't been sold yet or whatever? Would that just be a vacant lot? Because if so, it'll cause problems.
Okay, and it is a vacant lot now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what sort of problems have you identified with the lot at this point?
The problems that I identify with a vacant lot
Yes, ma'am.
is people throwing junk on it, people using it to hang out, throw their beer cans. It's a lot of things with a vacant lot.
Well, he wants to purchase it and build a house on it.
I mean, for a vacant lot, the ones that are not being sold.
Yes, ma'am.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, certainly this individual did make an offer, and I believe he, by purchasing these lots and constructing his personal home on there, he'll have some incentive for keeping the other lot beautified. And I know something else as well is the city maintains our own lots, but having him there or having the property owner to maintain the lot will help, I think, give it more prompt attention that the city's resources could.
Yeah, and it probably will give the entire neighborhood more incentive.
Yes, ma'am.
If we have someone in there that's gonna relegate these amendments and to keep them going, because as it is on the street that I live on, it just attracts the dope dealers. It attracts people that don't keep up their yard. They don't believe in cutting their grass. Some of them probably can't afford to. And because it's a lot of senior citizens there. And then their front yards, some of them, it's just a dump area.
Yes, ma'am. What we're talking about is the three lots that are being sold on there. So
I'm talking about the entire neighborhood.
Yes,
I'm saying
that hopefully this will clean it up.
The 3 lots that are being sold, hopefully
Clean
that
it
it will help the neighborhood.
Yes, ma'am. That is our hope, especially since it will be owner occupied.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here tonight. Yes, ma'am. Miss Maddie Bush.
How you doing? The address where he gonna build his house is what, 817? I mean, 817.
Yes, ma'am. The 2 adjacent lots. Yes, ma'am. 807, 817. Which again, they're vacant lots, but 911 assigns a street address to all parceled lots, whether a structure's on there or not. But those are the lots that he reviewed with a realtor and made an offer on.
Okay, so he gonna build a house on 817?
Either yes, he'll have a house at the lots of 807 and 817, and then I believe his plan also is to have some sort of like a garage or some sort of annex or accessory building, for his personal effects in his vehicle and such. So that is the plan, yes.
Okay. Okay. 817, I got to find out where that at.
Yes, and we have a copy of the map we can give you to help you identify it.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, Ms.
So
Mann.
long as it's going to improve the neighborhood.
Yes. And I do think having new housing construction on a lot now that is vacant will. I mean, yes, ma'am.
Encourage other development. We've seen that in subdivisions. It doesn't guarantee that the vacant lots are going to be bought and people will build houses on them, but it encourages that because of the newness coming into the neighborhood. People see that and are encouraged, and maybe they can purchase it.
He gonna live in the house.
He's going to live in the house.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Madden. Okay, any other comments? All right, any comments from council?
I think this is a good move.
No. Okay, all those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Moving down to number 6, this is a second reading and public hearing of an ordinance to amend the city budget for fiscal year 2018-19 by title and ordinance amending the budget of the city of Aiken for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2018 and ending June 30th, 2019. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman Dewar. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilman Waltz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our then
from staff.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm jumping ahead. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The then finance director has attached a memo regarding unspent funds from last year's budget. A number of the funds were due to items on order or not ready for delivery. We have added also since the August 13th meeting, council added money for undergrounding on South Boundary, and the appropriate budget adjustment line item is added for that expense. And also some funds have been added for some building repairs at Citizens Park. And as the cover memo notes, these requests fall in 3 categories: insurance claims, the items on order, as I mentioned, and expenses that will be spent from funds remaining at the end of June 30th that were requested to be held over. So this is sort of our annual summary of unspent funds that we asked for a council ordinance to roll into this current year's budget.
Thank you, sir. Any comments from the audience? Okay. Comments from council? Okay, all those in favor? And that passes unanimously. Thank you. Moving down to number 7 under old business, this is a second reading and public hearing of an ordinance to sell a lot on Summer Street Northeast by title, an ordinance approving the sale of a lot on Summer Street in Edgewood subdivision. Is there a motion?
I so move.
Thank you, Councilwoman Diggs. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilman Girardeau. Comments from staff?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. We do have a parcel at Edgewood that the adjacent property owner has been desiring to purchase from the city for several years, and an offer has been made for $2,000 for the property, and it is before you for second reading this evening.
Thank you, sir. Any comments from the audience? Comments from council? Okay, all those in favor on second reading? That's unanimous. Thank you. Moving now to item number 8 under old businesses is a second reading and public hearing of an ordinance authorizing a development agreement between the City of Aiken and WTS of Rutland LLC for improvements located at the intersection of Lawrence Street and Rutland Drive. By title, an ordinance authorizing the City of Aiken to enter into a development agreement with WTS of Rutland LLC for the development of property located at 1012 Lawrence Street Northwest, SC 19. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Okay. Thank you very much. Comments from staff?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We do have a development agreement before you where the city will contribute up to $90,000 from the Economic Development Fund to assist with intersection improvements that the development is required to do by the South Carolina Department of Transportation. The cost estimate for the improvements is for the actual intersection improvements on the road is approximately just shy of $124,000. We received today a cost also for any signalization improvements, and those are estimated to be about $48,000. Again, we would contribute up to $90,000 of that amount, with any difference being contributed by WTS of Rutland LLC. And this is something similar that we have done in other parts of the city. We did several years ago two similar development agreements, which this was based on to provide necessary improvements for development where the Discount Tire, Krispy Kreme, and Harbor Freight are located, and also improvements for where the old Teresa's Mexican restaurant is, allowed the development of buildings that house currently used to house Chipotle and house the Starbucks. So this is a similar type agreement that was done back several years ago.
All right, thank you, Mr. Biedenbaugh. Any comments from the audience? Okay. Comments from council?
I have a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
I don't agree with the city manager that this is similar to what we've done in the past. What we've done in the past was mostly stormwater type of things, which are very clearly our responsibility. I have two concerns with this. Number one, did we ask SCDOT to do any of this improvement?
Mr. Price is here from WTS.
Oh, good.
But he had a lot of conversations with DOT.
Mr. Mayor, members, staff, I'm Jim Price, live at Flowing Well Road in Aiken County on a farm. We entered into this agreement, or trying to enter into this development agreement with the city due to a couple of factors. Number one, when we get our approval, part of the approval process is that we have to do a traffic study. That traffic study showed that you have an existing issue at Lawrence Street and Rutland Drive. And if you don't believe me, you just need to go out there and look at it.
I believe you.
It's there.
So we have a huge issue. It's not an 8 o'clock and 3 o'clock issue. It's a daily issue. What we have agreed to do, what we want to do is we're putting in the right turn lane. We've done the study. We've paid for the traffic study. Our traffic engineer is in agreement with your traffic engineer on the improvements that need to be done at that intersection to make the LOS favorable and not level F on the whole quadrant. That being the case, it's an issue. It's a city issue now before we get there, Mr. Dwyer.
Okay.
And what we're doing is we're trying to alleviate that concern so that we can have smooth, safe ingress and egress into our facility and start the development process on the north side that you've heard Ms. Diggs speak about tonight. And I believe this is the beginning of what that would be. Now, the $90,000 that we're looking at, we have a traffic study done for $123,000 to improve the intersection. That does not count the signalization. The signalization is, it came in today from the engineers at, it's about $23,000 for the equipment, the strain pole, cutting the loops in, and then the estimate called for a $26,000 mobilization, bond, and traffic control fee. Now, I think that's excessive. I think that we will bid that price, and we would really hope that the city would entertain on some level on that, on fixing that signal also.
Okay. Well, it's my understanding that this agreement limits the city expense to $90,000.
That is correct.
Yeah, okay. Do you have a specific construction date that you're going to begin?
We have started.
You've started, okay. So paragraph 3 then really is almost superfluous since that they're going to do the development. And that paragraph says that the obligations of the development agreement will run with the property and be binding on any future owner should the improvements not be completed before any property transfer. So if they started construction, there's not going to be any property transfer. So, okay. All right. That's all I had. Thank you, sir. Nice to see you here.
Mr. DeVar, and Mr. Price can correct me if I'm wrong, but they built a similar, didn't you? And the one in North Augusta is very similar to this one, right?
Very, very similar.
Yeah.
Exit 5, the Walnut.
I went over there, Mr. Wyatt, and looked at that, and that is a great development. It would be really good for this side of town.
And I'm sure this one will be equally good.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you for choosing that spot.
And that intersection, as Mr. Price said, is screwed up all day long.
I wish they could do it on something about the other end.
Yeah, yeah.
I see people risk their lives every day trying to get to Aiken High School.
Yeah, the process of what SCDOT did at Aiken High School is questionable as to what was the theory of making one lane. And I know they wanted a turning lane, but it just created a mess.
All right, any other comments? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor on second reading? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Moving down to new business. Number 1, this is a first reading of an ordinance to annex 503 Palm Drive and zone it residential single-family RS15 by title, an ordinance to annex property located at 503 Palm Drive and to zone the same residential single-family RS15. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Councilman Girardeau.
I second.
Councilwoman Diggs with a second. Comments from staff?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We do have this annexation request to annex 503 Palm Drive and zone it RS15 residential single family. The Planning Commission reviewed this at their August the 14th meeting and unanimously recommended it be annexed RS15. And it's before you tonight for first reading and public hearing.
All right, thank you, sir. Any comments from the audience? Comments from council? Hearing none, all those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Item number 2 was continued, so we move down to item number 3 under new business at this time, which is a first reading of an ordinance authorizing an interfund loan for the installation of an HVAC units at Weeks Center and approval of a budget amendment to the 2018-19 budget to include funding for the installation of the HVAC units. By title, an ordinance authorizing the borrowing from the Water and Sewer Fund Equipment Replacement Account as outlined in this ordinance for the purpose of funding the installation of HVAC units at the HO Weeks Center and further adjusting the 2018-19 budget for this funding. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Councilwoman Waltz seconded. Councilman DeWar made the motion. Comments from staff?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. We did last year enter into an agreement with Amoresco and part of that was to replace the HVAC unit at the Weeks Center, and I know that was an item that council, we discussed at a meeting this spring, but subsequent, we did have an energy audit done, which I think a lot of the work can be done with staff, so we went ahead, I made the decision to, we go ahead and cancel we're canceling the contract, and we will be doing some of these upgrades as we move through the coming years. We do need to execute an interfund loan for the installation of the HVAC units, and you have the budget amendment before you, and we will be paying this back over 10 years using LGIP, our local government investment pool interest rate plus 1%.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Biedenbaugh. Any comments from the audience?
Jay
Good evening.
Thompson, 240 Knox Ave. Avenue, I hope that when you all budget these things out, as somebody who rents Odell Wake Center, that you will consider having local control of the temperature at Odell Wakes.
Yes.
Please make sure that's in the budget. Thank
Yes,
you.
that is part of it. Yes.
I agree with that. Thank you, Jane Page. Any other comments? All right, comments from council? All right, all those in favor on first reading? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Item number 4 under new business. This is a first reading of an ordinance to amend the 2018-19 budget to include funding for roof replacement at the Shaw's Creek Water Plant and approve the bid for the roof. By title, an ordinance amending the budget of the City of Aiken for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2018 and ending June 30th, 2019. Is there a motion?
I so move.
Councilwoman Diggs and Councilwoman Gregory is second. Comments from staff?
Yes, we do have a need for roof replacement that has come up since we began the budgeting process. We estimated the replacement to be $250,000. We were very pleased that it's a local vendor with a bid of $80,800 with a 15% contingency. So we are requesting a budget amendment not to exceed $93,000 to replace the roof at our water plant at Shaw's Creek.
Thank you, Stuart. Comments from the audience? Okay, comments from council? All right. All those in favor on first reading? And that's unanimous. Thank you.
And based on the weather, it can't come soon enough.
I know, right?
Is the hurricane here?
Moving down to petitions and requests. Number 1, this is a request to place banners and bows downtown promoting various events. Is there a motion?
I move.
Thank you, Councilman Jarrett. Second.
I second.
Thank you, Councilwoman Diggs. Comments from staff?
Yes, we have before you, we did put them all in one memo, but they are before you for the times and dates noted in the memo for the 5 requests.
Okay. And could you just read?
Oh, yes, I will be.
Briefly, for the
Yes.
record?
Thank you, Mayor. I will. The Pink Ribbonettes are requesting banners, pink bows on the lamp posts in October for Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Approximately 100 bows along Newberry Street in the alley. The Aiken Downtown Development Association is requesting 4 banners to promote Aiken City Limits, which is a musical event between October 4th and October 18th. The Ms. Susan Selden of the Cumbie Center has requested permission to place purple ribbons on light poles on Lawrence Street and Park Avenue during the month of October to bring awareness to the issues of domestic violence. Ms. Nancy Carl of the Aiken Garden Club Council is requesting permission to place banners in the downtown promoting the Aiken Garden Show to be held May 17 and 18 of 2019. And USC Aiken is requesting permission to place banners on the alley arches to promote their Amp the Alley sponsorship during their Parents Weekend and their joint efforts with ADDA to host Oktoberfest. Banners will be hung September 11 through 29 on the alley arches.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Beanball. All right, we'll open it up for comments from our audience, and I think we have some pink ribbonettes with us tonight. Okay. Thank you for your patience and being here with us.
Irene Hawley, 119 Hemingford Way. And I am the current president of Pink Ribbonettes. And of course, you're probably familiar with us. We are the Breast Cancer Survivors Group, support group here. We are all volunteers. We don't really call ourselves having a membership because we don't have to worry about dues and, signing in and signing out. But we probably have anywhere from 40 to 50 people on our roster. And we meet the first Tuesday of the month, except in the summer, June, July, and August, we don't meet. And we're not meeting in October because October 18th, we have a big celebration, and that's our pink tea. So we'd like to invite you to that, too. But normally, we meet the first Tuesday of the month at Millbrook in the atrium of the church. And we give no medical advice. We are there as emotional, just support, say, we've been there, we've done that, we kind of know what you're going through. So that's the Pink Ribbonettes. We've been around for a long time. And some of you probably remember Miss Peggy Peach, who just passed away this past week. And she was one of the founders of the Pink Ribbonettes. And it was a cause near and dear to her heart. So it's with that also in mind that we'd like to put our pink ribbons up for the month of October this year.
Thank you, Ms. Hawley.
Thank you so much.
I'm glad.
Brochures, if anybody would like one.
Yeah.
This is just about the Pink Ribbonettes.
I'm glad you mentioned Peggy because she's been here in the past doing just what you did tonight, and we do miss her.
Anyone else?
Yeah. I think everybody probably like one.
If you have extra, I'll take them for our health center.
All right.
And if you have pink ribbons that we can have, we just did teal for ovarian
Thank you,
cancer,
Ms.
but we'd be happy to do pink for
Thank you so much.
breast cancer awareness.
So we would just need to get in contact with you?
Yes, ma'am. I can give you a card, and my best friend Deborah died a month ago at 61 with breast cancer.
It's no respecter of persons.
Yes, exactly.
It doesn't matter, male or female. We used to have a male member of our Pink Ribbonettes, but he's now retired to Florida. You know, retired. Instead of coming from Florida to Aiken, he went the other way. But he had breast cancer like in the 70s, and he was very much an advocate for people getting educated and finding out about what's going on and how to tell when you have breast cancer. This pink tea that we're having October the 18th.
Ms. Hawley, if you'd like to reach more people, if you speak into the microphone, it'll be on our. No. Just I was going to say, if you'll make your comments from there. That
You
way
mean my
everyone can-
school teacher voice isn't loud enough?
It doesn't pick up on the TV as well.
Okay, thank you. I'll just be real quick here. This pink tea that we're having, it's the 9th one, I believe. Isn't it, Joan? Number 9. And it's to educate and celebrate. To educate the rest of the community about breast cancer and to celebrate survivors. Next year, I'll be a 19-year survivor. And, you know, you never know if you're going to make it. That's our Pink Ribbonettes. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Is it at USC Aiken this time, or where is it?
appreciate that.
Joan, what church?
Thank you.
At St. Paul Lutheran. St. Paul.
St. Paul Lutheran.
On the bypass.
Very good.
2 to 4 on October the 18th. Everybody's invited.
Thank
You don't have to be a survivor. You don't have to, just come and enjoy. You don't have to register either.
Thank you.
Ms. Hawley.
Thank you.
Thank you. I guess
You're good.
And before, are there any other comments on the items? I didn't think so. I would like to say I'd like to absolutely second what Councilman DeWar said. We certainly miss Miss Peggy
Yes.
here, and what a tremendous person and leader she was in our community. Thank you. All right, with that, all those in favor? And of course, that passed unanimous. Thank you for being here. Number 2 under petitions and requests, this is a request for approval of memorandum of understanding with Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program, VITA, regarding facility space at H. Odell Weeks Center. Is there a motion?
I so move.
Thank you, Councilman Dew. Councilman Waltz. Councilman Waltz. Comments from staff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For over a quarter century, we have partnered with the VITA program for use of our facilities at the Weeks Center, providing space as they help eligible citizens with their annual tax returns. And as the program has grown, it has required more dates, time, and space at the Weeks Center. So we did set out an MOU to lay out our responsibilities along with their responsibilities. I do want to point out that we will be providing tables and chairs and maintenance of the room, storage space for their equipment, with the understanding we're not responsible if something were to happen while it is stored. And the Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program is providing a site coordinator to work directly with staff, and they will provide their own computer computer equipment, as well as their own Wi-Fi service and supplies, and will schedule and accept clients daily so that the room will be completely vacated by 6 p.m. each day. Those are the highlights of the proposed MOU of this program, to continue this program.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Beedenbaugh. All right, any comments from the audience?
And I believe Mr. Collins, who is the coordinator, is here.
Hey, Mr. Collins, good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for
Mayor,
a great program.
Members of council, I'm William G. Collins Jr., Bill Collins. I live at 2 Spyglass Drive, and I've been the coordinator of the volunteer income tax program at the Odell Week Center for a number of years. I've been volunteering there about 15 years, I guess, and coordinating about 5 or 10, I guess. At any rate, I'm in favor of this memorandum of understanding. We have, as Mr. Bedenbaugh said, and as the MOU says, been operating at the Odell Week Center for quite a number of years, which is great. We really appreciate the support of the city in providing us that workspace. But as also has happened, the number of taxpayers we serve has increased, and the space and time at the Odell Week Center has increased, and it's been an informal arrangement in the past, and it's good to get it formalized a little bit, set some parameters for it. I'll just mention that last year in the tax filing season for tax year 2017, which was, of course, the filing period was in 2018, we served around 1,400 taxpayers, completing federal and state tax returns for them. These are folks who are mostly the working poor or retired people on modest income, modest pension, maybe a little bit of investment income, people who are not high income people. And it really is a great benefit to them to have this free service they get. So I want to thank the city and advocate approval of this MOU. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Thank you for all you do to serve our community.
Sir.
Any other comments from the audience? Okay, comments from council?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I was a volunteer for a couple of years before I came to Aiken, and an AARP volunteer since. These folks do an absolutely superb job. I think if one of the numbers I heard was they saved about well over $200,000, or have provided well over $200,000, almost $300,000 worth of tax services. Wow. And they're going to have a real challenge next year with the new tax law. It's going to be more and more difficult, and it's a challenge to keep people trained. But I'm very happy with Odell Weeks, and we should applaud Odell Weeks for the great job they're doing in making this all happen. Thank you, Mr. Collins.
Thank you, sir. All right, all those in favor? And that's unanimous. Congratulations, Mr. Collins, and thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Moving down petitions and requests to number 3, this is a resolution adopting the Urban Forest Management Plan. By title, a resolution adopting the Urban Forest Management Plan. Is there a motion?
I'll move.
Thank you.
Second.
Councilman Walz. Second by Councilwoman Gregory. Comments from staff?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We did hear from in April the Urban Forest Management Plan from Bartlett Tree experts, and we wanted to more formalize kind of our adoption of this plan. I know that the plan was paid for by a generous benefactor, and I know we've started utilizing some of the components. I know our Public Services Acting Director, Tim Coakley, and our horticulturalist and arborist, Aaron Campbell, I know are always adjusting as trees are planted and taken down and so forth. But we did talk in April about formally adopting the plan and implementing where we can. We know, for example, there's quite a number of trees to remove, and that's going to be a tall order, and we're working on that as best we can. But we do have this resolution for adoption, or for council's consideration for adoption tonight.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Beedenbaugh. Any comments from the audience? Comments from council? All All those in favor of adopting the resolution of the Urban Forest Management Plan, and that's unanimous. Thank you.
And I want to note too, and Tim, correct me, Aaron Campbell has received his certified arborist designation just in the last week. Okay, yes, so he's been training and preparing for that since he began his employment with the city, late 2017, I believe. So.
Very good. All right, moving down petitions and requests, item number 4. This is approval of a revised scope of work for bicycle infrastructure project funded by Federal Transportation Alternative Programs. Is there a motion?
So moved.
All right, Councilman Waltz, second. Councilwoman Gregory, thank you. Comments from staff?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In January 2015, City Council approved our submission of an application for a TAP grant, as they're called, Federal Transportation Alternative Program, and at the time it was for share the road signage on Hampton Avenue from Camellia Street to Vaucluse Road, share the road pavement markings, which is so-called sharrows, and signage on Park Avenue from Hain Avenue to Union Street, and a bicycle lane on Hampton Avenue from Camellia Street to York. There were additional federal and state requirements added since the grant award, so the scope of work for item 3 is cost prohibitive outside of our approximately $100,000 grant. So city staff worked with SCDOT to develop a revised scope. The items, number 3 in the initial section has been removed and replaced with share the road signage only, no pavement markings on Hampton from Camellia to Vaucluse, and share the road pavement markings and signage in both directions on Richland Avenue West from Pendleton Street to Waterloo Street. Our costs will not change. This revised scope will not change the original financial terms of the grant that are laid out.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Biedenbaugh. Any comments from the audience? Yes, ma'am. Good evening.
My name is Cora Cunningham, and I live on Chesterfield Street. And I just saw the signs posted for the program, I guess. Anyway, I just wanted to support trying to move towards making Aiken a more bicycle-friendly place. I ride my bike all over downtown. It's one of the things I love about living here. And I recently took a trip to Denver, and it's just awesome how the city is so friendly to bicyclists. We stayed in Airbnb, and we got to ride our bike around downtown. And anyway, I just want to say thank you for trying to make that happen, and that I fully support any efforts to try to make Aiken more bicycle-friendly. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cunningham. And we appreciate your patience for sitting here with us. Well, good. If nothing else, we hope to be interesting. Thank you for that.
Ms. Cunningham, I thank you for coming out and expressing that interest, because it's definitely something Aiken needs to move towards. Definitely.
I have a question, just.
Yes, sir.
When we put these on Park Avenue, where on Park are they going to go? Behind the parking or?
No, they will go in the lane, the sharrows, it's a sharrow, so they will go in the right-hand lane in both directions on Park. They will not go on the left-hand lane, so the lane opposite the parkway.
Right, okay.
All right. Any other comments from council?
Okay, now explain that again.
They will go in the lane, on the lanes, the outer lane, not on the inner lane adjacent to the parkways.
Behind where the cars park.
Yeah. They will go.
Where there's.
The sharrows will go. There's 2 lanes on Park Avenue in this portion of the road from Hain to Union Street. So that is 2 lanes in either direction.
Right.
So the lanes that are on, say, the George Funeral Home side is where the sharrows will go there. And then coming west back from the railroad depot to town, they will go on the municipal building lane, the sharrows.
Okay, so what happens to the front end parking?
No, nothing. These are not lanes, these are sharrows, which are share the road markings. We are not putting in bicycle lanes. It's sharrows, the little chevron marks with a bicyclist on it.
It's really more for an awareness.
Yes.
To remind.
No parking spaces are being removed, or this is not going to be like what was on Hain Avenue. It is share the road markings, the sharrows.
Ms. Thompson, did you want to say something?
I did.
I'll amend our rules to.
My office building is impacted by this, and it just occurred to me when you said on the storefront side, not the Parkway side, Hain to Lawrence on the southwest, southeast lane is right turn only at the intersection of Lawrence. So you're going to have bicycles in their bicycle lane going straight across Lawrence when traffic is turns
right onto Lawrence.
When it should be going straight. So wouldn't it make sense on the southwest to southeast lane of Park to put them in the left side, not in the right side? Because when you get to Chesterfield, you have the same, or no, you get to Union Street, you have the same.
The right way, yeah. Union Street, the sharrows will end. It becomes 2 lanes right there at Giles Park and at the Union Street Bridge. It will just be 1 lane in either direction, so the sharrows will end there.
So won't that create a traffic hazard for cyclists at Lawrence and Park? If the sharrow lane goes straight, but all of the vehicular traffic goes right, and crossing traffic is anticipating that right turn and only 1 lane coming across now.
Right, yeah,
Cars and cyclists will be crossing Lawrence at a very dangerous intersection at 2 lanes rather than just 1.
Well, that's a good question, and one I don't have an answer for. So
thought I'd throw that safety concern for cyclists out there.
If we want to continue this, we can find that answer out.
I have another question with this. I'm sorry, you done?
Yes, I'm done.
Okay.
That was a good point, Jane Page.
We're talking about taking over Park Avenue.
That is correct.
We're talking about making some changes.
Yes.
Are we going to spend this money, then make changes, and then redo what we're doing, or would we wait till we finished our plan?
I think it will be. This was put in motion, I guess, before the program was implemented by the Department of Transportation. So that is something conceivably we could defer and get some additional information on that particular issue with the Park Avenue sharrows.
Yeah, because I think we need to make it work a little better. With their new plan, it might work better.
Yes.
And I think Jane Page's, Ms. Thompson's points were about.
Spot on. I mean, it's called dodgeball, not dodge bike.
Is there a way to approve the other? Can we approve the other portions and just hold that one section?
Yes, we can go ahead and do that and then work with DOT going forward.
So I think the motion came from Mr. Waltz and the second from Ms. Gregory. Would you guys be willing to amend your motion and second to include everything except for the Park Avenue, which we will...
From Hain to Union Street, which is... So it will include everything except that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Omit that part of the
Correct.
agenda. Okay, gotcha. Yep.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Okay. And staff will get those answers back to us.
Yes.
Okay. Everyone understand? We're pulling that section out. We're voting on everything except for the Park Avenue between
Hain Avenue and Union Street.
Yeah. And if you wish, I can restate what will be done. I mean, just the...
I think we have that, so it's everything but that.
Okay.
All right. All those in favor of the motion, which excludes the Park Avenue portion? Okay. And that's unanimous. Thank you. Moving down to number 5 under petitions and requests, this is approval of project agreement with South Carolina Department of Parks, Recreation, and Tourism for a grant for walking trails at Generations Park. Great. Is there a motion?
I so move.
Thank you. Councilwoman Diggs, is there a second?
Second.
All right. Thank you. Councilman Jericho, comments from staff?
Yes, we received notification several months ago. We received a recreational trails program grant for $100,000, and we will It'll allow us to pave the mulch surface at the Generations Park, and we have to have this grant approved. We are matching $25,000. The grant requires a 25% match, which will come out of CPST funds, and we need a council approval in order to execute the grant document.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Beedenbaugh. Any comments from the audience? Any comments from Jane Page?
That was good.
Left, so.
The audience.
Comments from council? Okay, all those in favor? And that's unanimous. At this time, I would like to ask, I know it's raining, but we're going to have Chief give us maybe an update on, on our preparations and what's going on with the city. Chief, thank you. I know it's been a long day for you, so thank you for hanging with us.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. As you're aware, probably seen on the news, Hurricane Florence is inbound to the east coast of the United States. It's now a Category 4, growing in size and strength. It's tracking just a little bit more north. Maximum sustained winds are about 130 miles an hour. Landfall with late Thursday afternoon. As you're aware as well, or may not be, the governor has issued a state of emergency and has closed state offices as well as schools starting tomorrow in 26 counties, including Aiken. The mandatory evacuation for all coastal counties will start tomorrow at noon. I-26 and South Carolina 501 will be reversed for that evacuation. How does that impact us? As far as weather goes, we'll have some rain and wind gust. They're predicting to about 40 miles an hour. Other responsibilities that we have due to the evacuation plan for South Carolina, South Aiken will open tomorrow about 11:30 and start preparation for evacuees from the coast. As part of that, we'll start manning traffic safety points at tomorrow afternoon and security for the shelter. Again, we'll be working with emergency management, have another conference call tomorrow at 9 o'clock, and again, adjusting the needs of those responses. We've been working on this since probably about last Wednesday, off and on, just in preparation for this and the activation of the Emergency Operations Center. Aiken County's Emergency Operations Center will go to OPCOM 1 tomorrow at 1 o'clock with full operation of the Emergency Management Center.
Thank you, Chief.
Is South Aiken the only shelter we're going to have open?
At this point, yes, ma'am. It can hold about 880 folks.
Okay.
And as it reaches half capacity, they'll start opening other.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Chief. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please stand up.